Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, the meeting of the Business License Commission is called to order. We begin to acknowledge that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabriel-Yano, Tongva, and Gabriel-Yano Keys peoples. Who would like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Jordan, would you like to lead it?
Sure. Everyone please rise, place your hand over your heart. Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Secretary, could we please get a roll call?
Commissioner Berry?
Here.
Commissioner Cochran?
Present.
Commissioner Ng?
Here.
Commissioner Hang?
Present.
Commissioner Volin?
Here.
Vice Chair Yusupov?
Present.
And Chair Eisenberg.
Present.
And we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, approval of the agenda, next item. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second? Okay.
And who was the
Get
first
that?
motion by? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Volin.
Volin. And Berry.
Okay.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Berry?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Roll call vote.
Oh,
No, aye.
oh, I,
You approve the agenda.
Commissioner Cochran?
Aye.
Commissioner Ng? Aye. Commissioner Hang?
Aye.
Commissioner Volin?
Aye.
Vice Chair Yusupov?
Aye.
And Chair Eisenberg.
Aye.
And the item is approved.
Okay, item number 5, approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes for May 7th, 2024?
There are no changes.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner, Secretary, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Berry?
aye.
Commissioner Cochran?
Aye.
Commissioner Ng? Aye. Commissioner Hang?
Aye.
Commissioner Volin?
Aye.
Vice Chair Yusupov?
Aye.
And Chair Eisenberg.
Aye.
And the item is approved.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6, public comment. Do we have any speakers at this time?
There are no speakers at this time.
Okay. Okay, we're going to item number 7, the public hearing. Okay. The Business License Commission shall conduct a public hearing to consider revoking Cannabis Legacy Medical Business License number CLM 000001 for business known as Pharmacy Collective, doing business as MedMen WeHo, located at 8208 Santa Monica Boulevard. I'll now open the public hearing on item 7A. Secretary, how is this item noticed?
All notices are posted at the city's 3 legally required posting locations and sent to all occupants within 500 feet of the business.
Okay. Does any commissioner have any ex parte disclosures to make? Given that this is a formal business revocation hearing, each commissioner shall please state on the record any conversations that the commissioners have had or evidence received upon which they may base their decision about this item, or if everything discussed was contained in the staff report. Commissioner Volin, we'll start with you.
No disclosures here.
I have none to disclose, Chair.
No disclosures.
Okay. Commissioner
No
Ray.
disclosures.
I have no disclosures as well.
No disclosures.
I have a disclosure. I spoke with a representative of the cannabis lobby. And everything that we spoke about is in the staff report. Okay, the city attorney now has some procedural matters to go through.
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you. Good evening. There was just 2 items that I wanted to talk through before we start the formal public hearing tonight. First, I'll just note for the record that city staff has been working with the city prosecutor on gathering evidence and presenting the evidence before the commission tonight. So I'm at this table to serve as commission counsel to answer procedural questions you have and to help you navigate through the hearing process. And then city staff will be working with the city prosecutor with respect to any evidentiary presentation and questions you may have. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the West Hollywood Municipal Code requires that oral evidence may only be accepted tonight upon oath and affirmation. So I'm going to ask everybody who is testifying tonight to say that their testimony is truthful. So if anyone who is going to give testimony tonight could please stand up, and I'm going to ask staff to attest as well. So say I do, if the testimony you'll be giving is going to be truthful and correct. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding before the West Hollywood Business License Commission this evening?
I do.
No one else is testifying? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So we hope that everybody who's planning on took the swearing in. Okay, Secretary, Jessica, is there a staff report?
Hi, good evening, Chair Eisenberg. This is Jessica Benitez, Code Enforcement Supervisor for the City of West Hollywood. And with us tonight is City Prosecutor James Eckert, who's going to be presenting tonight.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you. So to start off with, I don't want to bore or belabor the issues that have already been presented in the staff report. So what I'm going to do is just kind of briefly go over some of the most salient facts with respect to the proceedings that we're here for today, and then obviously be available for answering any questions that may happen. As you're all aware, the cannabis activities are a highly regulated field, and the City of West Hollywood has therefore enacted several regulations pertaining to cannabis activities. The particular business that we're looking at today, known as MedMen, but is actually Pharmacy Collective, is what we call a legacy cannabis business. And so the legacy cannabis businesses are regulated even to a greater degree than some of our other cannabis businesses in the city. And because of that, there are very specific regulations that are applicable to them. And that is ultimately the basis of the staff's recommendation to the Business License Commission to actually do a revocation of that legacy business license. Specifically, what we're looking at are regulations that pertain under Code Section 5.70.043, subsection B, which are the regulations, again, that apply to the legacy cannabis businesses. And specifically under that, we're looking at subsection 7 initially, which is that cannabis legacy businesses are prohibited from entering into management agreements without going through a process whereby the Business License Commission would be able to approve a variance to allow them to operate under a different management agreement. In this particular thing, as evidenced by the staff report, and at the conclusion of this, we will just have for the record Vito provide a statement that everything contained in the staff report is accurate, just so that that can be taken into consideration by the Business License Commission as testimony. But the city uncovered the fact that, in fact, they were already operating under a management agreement that was not approved by the city. It was not reviewed by the Business License Commission, and that became a substantial issue. Staff communicated with the operators, MadMen, advising them that that was not the appropriate process, that they needed to get a review and approval before they did that, and that never happened. I can say for you, as evidenced as documented in the staff report, that in April, a receiver was actually appointed over MadMen and all of its assets. And we do have the receiver that's been appointed by the Superior Court here today, who will be able to present evidence on behalf of MedMen. But he did take over, and ultimately, after further communications with staff, the management agreement was terminated. And there is a copy of that information provided to you in the staff report. But that being said, it was in existence for approximately 3 months. 3 months without the approval. And there's a reason that the council has enacted these regulations that are applicable to the legacy business, cannabis businesses, and specifically requiring the Business License Commission's approval of any type of variance that would allow for one of these management agreements. And it gives the city more control over who's going to be operating, how it's going to be operated, and ensuring that these types of businesses continue to be operated in compliance with the regulations that we have. Again, that didn't happen in this particular case. The second issue of concern for staff is the failure to pay the required taxes. As you're aware, there are business taxes that are due 7.5% off the gross sales that is due by cannabis businesses. For the months of December 2023, January 2024, March 2024, and April 2024, those taxes were due and payable the following month, and they were not paid by MedMen in a timely fashion. Now, I can report to you that I believe it was earlier today, the receiver did cause to be paid the taxes for December 2023 and January 2024. I have spoken with the receiver, Mr. Ormond, who's indicated that they're still doing calculations of the gross sales during March and April, and therefore we'll be reporting those and we'll be paying those, but as of this date, they have not been paid. It is for these reasons, and again, remember that the payment of these taxes is a big issue, right? I mean, that's a big part of the operation of these businesses. Now, I presume that what's going to happen is Mr. Ormond will present to you that as the court-appointed receiver, he's not per se the bad apple. He's not MedMen. He's not the one that violated these rules and regulations. But I will point out that at the end of the day, the license has been issued to MedMen. The revocation or the consideration of revocation before you is the revocation of a license from MedMen. It's not from the receiver, even though he's now operating under court authority to oversee the assets of MedMen. It is to revoke the business license of MedMen for the violations that were committed by MedMen. And while it's great that the receiver has come in and corrected some of those issues by terminating the management agreement and paying at least partially some of the delinquent taxes, if you're not familiar, a receiver is a court-appointed person who comes in and takes control over, in this case, business and its assets, but at some point the receiver will be relieved of his duties, right? And at that point, the assets, one of two things will happen with the assets. The assets will either revert back to the operator, MedMen, or the assets will be sold and they will be given to somebody else. That's an important thing for this Business License Commission to understand because, again, this is not to penalize the receiver, right? The revocation of this license is not being looked at as to penalize the receiver who, again, arguably has come in and done the right thing by terminating the agreement. But it is to ensure that MedMen, the actual license holder, can't operate in this incorrect way. And at the end of this receivership, it's likely, again, that one of two things will happen. Either the assets will return back to MedMen, and there's no guarantee that they will operate any differently than they did when they had this asset, right, or had control over the asset. Or two, that the assets would be sold off, right? Now, the city also has several regulations that are imposed for purposes of the transfer of a legacy business license. And so there are severe limitations on the legacy business license and the ability to just transfer that to another entity. In the same way that we regulate the management of the location, the transfer of that license would also be subjected to our regulations. And under the current code, 100% of that license cannot be transferred. As a matter of fact, under our current code, they can only transfer up to 35%. If they come in and get a variance from the Business License Commission, they can do up to 75%. But again, 25% of it would still fall back into the hands of MedMen. Because the receiver won't remain a receiver over this asset forevermore, right? I mean, it's going to be for a limited period of time. So I raise that to you because I want to make sure that the commission is aware that, you know, staff is presenting this to the Business License Commission because we've had wrongful acts committed by the licensee of a very highly regulated business. And our expectation is that entities or persons who come in and obtain licenses to do activities within our city are going to adhere strictly to the regulations that we've imposed, whether they're conditions of approval of a permit or a license or they're the law itself. That's our expectation, and we have every right to have that sort of expectation that everybody's going to go out there and comply with the law. And we have a business entity that operated under a management agreement without getting the prior approval of the city. We have a business entity that failed to pay taxes for 4 separate months. By the way, as indicated in the staff report, we're not alleging the failure to pay taxes for the month of February of 2024 because the business was actually shut down for that period of time. So it is just the 4 months. And again, although some of that has been corrected now, it took 3 months to get the management agreement terminated, and took, again, December of 2023 and January of 2024 taxes were paid today, right? So several months late on that as well. So because of that, staff is recommending to the Business License Commission to revoke the legacy business license from MedMen. And with that, I would just like to have Vito testify that the contents of the staff report are true and accurate under oath, so that can be taken as testimony by the commission.
Thank you, Jim. I testify that the contents within the staff report before you are true and accurate.
And then with that, obviously, I am available to answer any questions, as is staff available to answer any questions that the Business License Commission may have. And I don't know if you want to do that now, or if procedurally, if we're going to have other people talk and questions can be done.
I think now is the time we ask questions of staff. So let's go in order. Commissioner Barry, do you want to begin?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay,
No.
Commissioner Cochran?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. How long do these businesses normally have to pay those taxes? So like after January 31st, when do they need to have the taxes turned in by?
That's a great
or
question.
paid?
No, that's a great question. So most businesses are on an annual basis, and so they would pay it immediately after or with the renewal of their business license. Cannabis businesses are handled a little bit differently in the city of West Hollywood because of the amounts of money that are actually being paid. Rather than waiting at the end of the month, the finance department has modified that pursuant to code to make it payable on a monthly basis. So for the month of, let's say January, or let's start with December of 2023, those taxes would be first reported to the city in January of 2024, and they would be paid in January 2024. So the reporting of the gross receipts and the amount of taxes that are due would be paid at that time.
And does that
The
mean
following
like the last day of the following month? So like by January 31st?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And if I may just add one thing, it's also important to note that the payment of the taxes is really, you have an operator that's acting really just as a pass-through, right? That these taxes are collected from the patron. Mm-hmm. And so what you really have is you have an operator that's collecting money from a patron, and supposedly all they're doing is holding that in trust until the end of the next month, at which point they turn it over to the city. So you don't really have the argument that, oh, we didn't have the money, because that money should have been set aside. That's money that you collected from the patron. It's not coming out of your own operating budget. That's excessive money that you've collected to be turned over. You're holding it merely in trust for that basically 30 to 60 days until it's paid.
In theory, you should be able to pay it the next day, but
Correct.
You give them 30 days.
Correct.
Or a month. Just out of my own curiosity, is there a penalty established for late paid taxes, like an additional percentage?
Late fee.
There's late fee?
And what is that? Or approximately? If you have to look it up, it's...
I'd have to look it up, but
Okay,
I'll
sorry.
look it up well. I'll look it up well if you want to continue asking.
Okay. And last one, just to clarify, when you guys are saying revoke their legacy license, that really means like revoking their entire license because they're a legacy, not just the legacy part.
That is correct. You'd be revoking the entirety of the business license, which is just called a legacy business license. And if they then wanted to continue operating, they would have to go through the process of every other cannabis business in the city.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Eng?
Thank you, Chair. City Attorney, my understanding is that the entity of MedMen no longer exists. So if this license was to go back, who would it go back to?
I think that's a question that we should ask the receiver for the factual information about the business that he took over, and then we could talk about that after the receiver testifies.
No? Okay. Commissioner Yusbarov?
My question is, what's the difference between legacy license and regular, later issued licenses?
So there's a number of differences, but primarily it's when the business actually started operating. So if it started operating prior to the city's new business licensing regulations pertaining to cannabis dispensaries, those particular businesses, and I believe there were 8 originally? 4. There were 4 originally that were pre-existing. They were deemed to be legacy businesses. And then, like I say, the requirements of being able to get a new license are obviously different than the ones that existed at the time that these businesses came into play. And so there are, in addition to that, different sets of regulations about how they operate a bit to some degrees. But the legacy businesses were initially medical cannabis locations that were then brought in as a legacy business after the new regulations came into play. And they were allowed to also expand into adult use cannabis. But initially they started all off as the pre-existing, if you will think about it kind of almost like a legal non-conforming sort of idea, right? It's they predated the creation of the new laws regulating the cannabis dispensaries. Or the
So
cannabis
it was
sector.
more difficult to obtain a legacy license than the subsequent licenses once the law changed, right?
The only business, well, I can back up just a second. The only businesses that could ever obtain a legacy medical were the 4 that were existing when the city adopted its new ordinance. And the reason that they are subject to different regulations is because they had been operating in the city for so many years that the regulations that cover them are in place so that they operate the same way they always have been. That's why there's limits on changing their branding and changing their location. And that's why they have to stay the way they are, because they got this right to continue operating the business that has always been here. And that's the critical part of the legacy, is that they've always been here and they need to continue operating the same way they've always served the community.
Now, once this legacy license, if it is revoked, then it's not going to be issued to anyone else because that's just doesn't exist anymore, right?
That is
So-
correct.
That's correct.
So there will be one less license, one less
Legacy business license, correct, yes.
Okay. And it doesn't increase the number of subsequent typical licenses?
That is correct.
Okay. Was there anything, like, I know the tax issue, probably a correctable issue if they paid for the penalty. At this point in the city view, whatever actions MedMen did, those are beyond correctable, correct? It's not like, the issue is not that they didn't properly, it's the violation of the license, but there's nothing to correct here.
Yes, I think that is an accurate statement. I think they have terminated the violation. They haven't per se corrected it. And, I use this example and it's not 100% on point, but the idea being, if I were to go rob a bank and then 30 days later return the money to the bank, it's great. I've given them their money back. I've made them whole, but I still committed a violation to begin with. And that's kind of what's going on here, is even though they have now terminated the agreement, they did operate illegally under this agreement for approximately 3 months. And that can't really be corrected because you can't go back and correct those 3 months. You can stop it from moving forward, which they did, which the receiver has done, but it doesn't really correct what happened for those 3 months.
And is this the first instance of business doing such thing in West Hollywood?
Is this the first instance of this business doing it, or of any business?
Or any business?
I don't have that answer.
Well, I'm assuming this is the first one for the cannabis business.
It's I believe it's the first one that we've been made aware of, yes.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
And I do have an answer to the question from before about the penalty. So pursuant to our code, section 3.36.180, for a delinquency, there's a 15% penalty on the first day of each month following the date that the tax was paid, up to a total of 50%.
And so for the 2 months that they did pay, did they also pay the penalty, or did they only pay what the tax was?
It's possible that Jessica has that answer.
Yes, hi, good evening. They did pay in full for December of 2023 and January of 2024.
Including the penalties that
penalty?
accumulated?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Heng.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. I have a question for you. Do we know how much business tax the business entity paid in November of 2023 when they last paid their taxes?
I don't have the specific amount. I mean, the city would have that information with finance, but we don't have that available today. And we typically would not provide specific amounts.
Gross receipts are confidential
Right.
under the West Hollywood Municipal Code, so that specific type of information is not made public.
So, just so that I have a better understanding, and maybe the public who's watching, what is the tax, where does the tax go to? What fund does it go to in the city?
General fund, it's not a special tax, so it doesn't go to any specific,
And what does the general fund usually pay for?
everything.
Are we talking about roads, potholes, trimming trees, paying for city staff, paying for social services for people with disabilities and older adults in the city?
All of the above.
All of the above. So these are essential programs that this tax money is supposed to be used to pay for. And this business entity did not pay taxes for several months. So the injured party, I'm assuming, would be the residents, like myself, in the city, who benefit from the use of this tax. So this general fund pays for everything. Staff time, trimming trees. I'm assuming taxes from the general fund also pay for our public safety, our sheriffs, our firefighter, paramedic, our block by block. So this business chose not to pay taxes for all those months, essentially undercutting the residents here, putting the public at risk, not paying city staff.
Can we limit this to questions, and then we'll deliberate at the end of the hearing?
Great. That is all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Volan.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you have this answer, but have there been any other cannabis businesses that were 3 months or more behind in paying their taxes?
I don't have that information.
Jessica, do you have that information?
No, I don't, but we're not aware of.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
That's it? Okay, I actually had the same question, if there were any other businesses that were delinquent, so maybe if we can find that information. Is MedMen open right now?
Yes.
So they are operating? There
Yes.
wasn't any mechanism in place to shut them down until the hearing on management?
That is correct.
And why is that?
Why is it that because there's a due process component that before we take something away from someone, we have to give them their due process, and this hearing provides that.
Okay. Okay, I think my other questions will be reserved for the applicant, or for the thing, so,
Chair, do you mind if I ask 2 more?
yeah, please.
Sorry, thank you. What did the business pay their regular sales tax for each of those months, or no taxes were paid?
I don't have.
That is the sales tax.
That's the additional tax, right?
So the 7.5% is not the sales tax, it's their business licensing tax. I don't know whether they paid their sales tax to the state of California. if
Just
that's
the
what question is.
regular that the city would collect?
That I don't know.
Okay. And what sort of process does the city go through if taxes aren't paid? Do we send a letter, and
There-
they have 15 days to contact or something?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that happen. Notices can be sent out, communications can be had with them. There's, they can make arrangements with staff for purposes of the payment of the money. So there's a variety of things. But everything all the way up to formal enforcement actions. Someone can be prosecuted for not paying the taxes.
And the city took all those actions?
Well, no. Nobody's
Correct.
been prosecuted as a result of this.
Were letters sent? Did we try to collect, or we just sort of found out oh, we're missing taxes for 4 months?
I believe those letters were in the staff report that Jessica sent out.
No, what was attached on the staff reports were the citations regarding the unapproved management services. Regarding the taxes, that is something that our finance department takes care. And typically what they do is they send a letter to the business owners as a reminder that they need to pay their taxes.
Okay. I have another question. In the letters that you sent, Jessica, was there a response by the receiver with any explanation about why they continue to operate without coming before the commission for a hearing?
So I will say that the receiver was formally appointed on April 25th with a subsequent hearing. I believe it was May 21st, where he was then subsequently confirmed by the court again to remain on as the receiver. And the termination of the agreement was around May 17th. I don't believe that there was any information that was provided as to why, during his control over the asset, that is from April 25th to why it took until May 17th. But obviously the receiver is not the one who had it operating under the management agreement from February until the point that he was appointed.
And who was managing it during that period?
That would have been MedMen or
Directly.
Pharmacy Collective. The company that's now under this, whose assets are now under this receivership.
Is that one plant?
One plant was the management company that was contracted with in order to do the management of the location. But they were hired by MedMen.
But one plant is still part of the operation now?
No. That's what was terminated on May 17th. So that was the management agreement. They were the company that was brought in to manage the location. That management agreement was terminated by the receiver on May 17th.
And who's managing it now? It's not MedMen.
It is MedMen under the auspices of the receivership.
Okay, directly. Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Bullen.
Thank you, Chair. In the staff report, it mentions that the legacy cannabis license is valid through June 30th, 2024. What happens after that? Is it automatically renewed for a year? Would they have to come back before the commission? It's on page 2 in the middle. It says on March 22nd, MedMen's business location resumed business operations. Their city cannabis license was valid through June 30th, 2024.
Yeah, Commissioner. So Danny Rivas, Director of Community Safety for the city. So typically, yes. When you do have an expiration date, then folks will make payment, and then the renewal of the license does get renewed on an annual basis. That is not something that comes before the commission. But of course, we are all here before you this evening, right, regarding this hearing. But if you were to just kind of remove the hearing, then yeah, traditionally and historically, it would just be renewed on an annual basis.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll now begin the public comment portion of the hearing. All questions and comments on this matter are to be directed to the commission, not the audience. Is the subject business present? Please approach the podium to make your presentation, and you'll have 5 minutes. If you need more, let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here this evening. My name is Richard Ormond. I am the court-appointed receiver that has been appointed over the assets of MedMen and its subsidiary companies. I will answer questions about how a receivership works for Commissioner Eng's purposes based on her question to the prosecutor. I want to start with just a quick anecdote. I was a member of this community for about 15 years until my kids ended up in school over the hill, so I've moved recently. But in a very unfortunate event, I had my neck broken in 3 places, and had to have emergency surgery to fix the damage to my neck. I have a metal titanium plate that holds it from C3 to C7. I was told that I may never walk again, that I may never have the same bodily control that I could have, and that the surgery was had a risk of not only being of paralysis, but could be fatal as well. And I had no choice to undergo the surgery, or I 100% would be paralyzed from the neck down. Post-surgery, I had terrible nerve damage and nerve pain, and as those of you that know about nerve damage is permanent. And I was given quite a bit of different medications to try to deal with that nerve pain. And I happened to live on Croft, and I walked up the street to a place called the Pharmacy Collective this is 2008, just to see if cannabis would be the right tincture for me or the right medicine for me. I was told that I could not buy it because I didn't have a medical card, so I went and got a medical card at my doctor's recommendation. And since then, rather than being on disability and having to give up my law career and my job, that medical cannabis has sustained me, and it has me here today. I use it almost every day to manage my pain and discomfort, and it is extremely successful. But for this particular location, coincidentally, I would not be in this position where I am today. I was appointed by the court to take over the assets of this business. It's owned by a Canadian public company which recently filed bankruptcy in Canada, that is MedMen Enterprises, Inc. MedMen Enterprises, Inc. Is now in the BIA, which is the equivalent of a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Canada. The American parent company is called MMCan USA, Inc. I am the receiver over the assets of that company, and that company owns downstream a number of different dispensaries in 5 different states, including the entity that owns this license. This license, after review, has significant value to the creditors of this company. As my job as receiver is not to benefit the shareholders, it's not to benefit the company, it's to benefit the people that are creditors of this company. The vendors, the service providers, the inventory providers, the employees, the lenders, et cetera, all that provided their services and goods to this company. And what I have to do is I have to maximize the value of each one of these locations. And some locations have to be maximize their value by selling them. So I have assets that are in Illinois right now where by Chicago rules and state of Illinois rules, I'm allowed to actually transfer those licenses, and I'm going through that process to transfer those licenses to a new operator and a new buyer. Licenses like this one, they have restrictions that I have to abide by that were mentioned earlier, that I can only transfer a certain amount, or I can get variances and try to transfer more. So from my perspective, the operation of this entity is actually the best value to create value for and monetary returns for those creditors of this business. And that is why I decided to instruct the company to pay the delinquent taxes. We're now assessing the remainder of the taxes that are owed because I believe we still owe for April and for May, and I'm processing those payments right now to get those completed, but we did get rid of the ones that were overdue in December and January, along with the penalties. And from my perspective as a court-appointed officer and being a fiduciary of these creditors, I think having this place open and operating under the auspices of the court is the best use of this asset right now to benefit those folks that are victims. I've had receiverships that have lasted, the longest I ever had lasted 13 years. I'm hoping that I'm not in this position for 13 years, I'll tell you right now. But this is not going to be a short-lived receivership. There are a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of claimants. We have a lot of different businesses that are operating, and it is keeping me busy full-time. The violation, I cannot apologize enough to the commission, to the commissioner and chair about the violation, but as soon as I learned that it was a violation, I took steps to terminate the agreement that was in place.
You can have 2 more minutes.
Thank you. And to rectify the situation and put it back under direct management of my receivership and through the entities that I have under its control. That's the best I can do. I don't equate this to a bank robbery. We didn't run into a bank and tie everybody up and hold them hostage and leave the bank with bags of cash. The company made a regulatory violation, and yeah, it cannot be unwound, but we did do our best to fix it. And so I would ask this commission, taking that I have such a duty to those folks that are owed money and owed benefits and everything else from this company, to give me an opportunity to improve the location, bring back its value, and make it once again a place where people like me that do need this type of treatment and this type of medicine can still get that access in that neighborhood at that location, which has been there for so very long and has, even for me personally, an important part of my life. I am happy to answer any questions about the receivership, the process, the location, everything I know about it. I'm an officer of the court. I have a fiduciary obligation to all of its creditors, including the City of West Hollywood, which is one of our creditors. So I'm happy to open the kimono and show you all the warts.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse the expression.
Okay. Okay, everyone's attested to telling the truth. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, we have Jay Handel.
And Jay, can you attest that you will be speaking the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Every day.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jay Handel. I'm one of the owners of the Woods in Holy Water. I'm here tonight to implore you to uphold the law. We, as a cannabis location, are under scrutiny on a daily basis by this city. Being catty corner to City Hall, we are always waiting for someone to come and check us out and see what we do. We operate by the rules. We put stupid things on our windows to keep people who are 21 who are drinking from looking at people who are 21 who are smoking. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but we did it. The fact in this case is clear. There are at least, what I read in the staff report, 3 violations of the municipal code, including a cease and desist letter to stop operating, and as of this afternoon, they were still operating. So they have complete disregard for the law. They're a bad operator in a city that shouldn't tolerate bad operators. It's just that simple. We pay our taxes, they don't pay their taxes. We stay open 90 days. They tried to cheat the system by opening a week before under an invalid management agreement and got caught. I sit here representing most of the cannabis businesses in the city of West Hollywood. We have met, you have letters, we have described exactly where we stand on this issue. This isn't about eliminating competition. This is about eliminating bad operators. MedMen is bankrupt. Where this license will end up going if you keep them open and the receiver is done, it can't go back to MedMen and it can't go 100% to anybody. So where does it go? It's time for you guys to make the proper decision. Where I'm elected on the west side in the neighborhood council system, it's simple. You violate municipal law continually and multiple municipal laws, you get hit by the city attorney with flagrant violation of the municipal code that is subject to 1 year in prison and up to $10,000 fine. You know, and what Commissioner Hang hit on is exactly the point. These funds that we pay them and the sheriff's contracts and the fire contracts. It's wrong. And they're still not paid up to date. To this date, to this hearing, they're trying to figure out what they should have paid. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. So on behalf of the non-legacy businesses who do the right thing and pay their taxes and operate legally, we support the staff report and we ask you to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
There are no other speakers at this time.
Okay. Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I can just clarify one thing. The cease and desist that was issued by the city was to cease and desist either operating under the improper management agreement or completely as a whole. And they did terminate the management agreement. So their operation right now is not illegal for them to continue operating until such time as obviously this commission potentially revokes it.
Because it's gone back to MedMen? Is that
Correct.
why?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Receiver Ormond, would you like to have a rebuttal?
Sure. I would just say, you know, a lot of us would say, by the grace of God, there go I. Hopefully, you know, when the Woods has a violation, they'll have the support of the community to be able to rectify it and fix it. I am a court-appointed officer. I am a new person. I am someone that has come in that is trying to button this up. Obviously, I can't do it all overnight. If I could, I would, but it takes a large group of people. I have one of those people with me here, Jessica, who works with me on a day-by-day basis to make sure that we're staying compliant or getting compliant with all the regulatory issues I have to deal with across the country. And that being said, my goal, like I said earlier, is to make this location compliant and work. When this receivership is done, it will transfer to whomever it can transfer to legally through the city of West Hollywood by court order and hand in hand. There's nothing that will be done by me. I value my reputation as a receiver and as a lawyer too much to do things in a way that is not by the book. And so when this asset transfers, gets assigned, or gets wound down if that ends up being the situation, it will be done in coordination with the city attorney, in coordination with the regulators, and by the book.
Thank you. Okay. Let's have questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Bueland, do you want to start?
For the applicant?
Yes, for the applicant.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Should I come back?
Why don't you stay there because
Okay,
we'll have
perfect.
questions. Okay. Commissioner Hang?
I have no questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Yusborough?
How many meetings with the city staff did you have?
I've had about 2 or 3 phone calls with the city attorney. I have been emailing a lot with Jessica, and I'm sorry, is it Danny? Yeah, and I've communicated with Danny as well in a couple of meetings. So I have been in regular communication with them.
So when were you made aware of violations?
I can't tell you the specific date, but was within a week of the termination, I can tell you that. So, and the only reason it took a week to do the termination was that I was understaffed at the time. I had just been appointed as receiver, and I was getting myself geared up to review all these things. And I'm not kidding. I'm getting 500 or 600 emails a day, and I receive the notification by email. And there were so many regulatory violations across the country that I was addressing that I did not realize that this was a red alert. Had I known it was a red alert, I would have acted that much sooner. But as soon as I realized it was important, that termination went out immediately. As a matter of fact, it went out on a Friday evening because I was finally catching up on Friday afternoon on my legacy emails, no pun intended, to get caught up. And I saw that this was a red flag and that needed to be taken care of, and so it went out that evening.
So there was a week of between once you heard about the violation and then actually.
I would say probably a week, maybe less.
Okay. No other questions.
Okay. Commissioner Ring?
Thank you, Mr. Ormond. I was deeply touched to hear your story. I think it's pretty known that I'm the only proponent
Thanks.
of the plant.
It's hard to tell in only 5 minutes, and I don't share it very often, but.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing it. I also appreciate you bringing up the legacy of pharmacy, because I know them, along with LAPCG, were serving the community when no one else was, in a time when it was incredibly risky to do so. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful to hear your story. And
I was actually afraid I was going to lose my bar license because of my medical marijuana card. I had to balance health versus my profession, and obviously my wife and I decided that health came first.
Well, let's just state for the record that it needs to be completely declassified, not reclassified.
Yeah.
I'm glad the plant worked for you. I am a regular user myself, and I've been in no car accidents, so there you go. I want to ask, the I understand what a value that the license would be to sell. Within that, does that, and maybe this is a question for staff, but does that also include the entire, I guess for this particular location, would it be possible if you sell the license to also include the location, the rent, all of those? Do those things stay intact?
So the short answer is a qualified yes. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts. You need the cooperation of the landlord to assign the lease to the new operator or purchaser. You need the cooperation with the city to transfer the license in the segments that you can, or transfer the entity with the segments that you can transfer in that you can't transfer. In essence, you can do it. It just takes a lot of work. I've done it many times. I've been a cannabis receiver now for about 10 years and have done this with many municipalities from San Jose all the way down to San Diego. Each city has its own different process that we have to learn. But the short answer is yes, it takes time. In this instance where you can only transfer certain percentages of the business, while the parent company is bankrupt in Canada, the next level down is the company that I'm in charge of. That company is not bankrupt, it's just in receivership. And so that company will either revert back to its original owners, which is unlikely, or what will likely happen is that the ownership interests of that entity will be put into some sort of trust for the benefit of the creditors of MedMen, so that when I'm gone, that trust will still generate revenue for those people that are owed money from the company. So there is a positive outcome at the end of this in some way, shape, or form. And I make decisions very quickly. If I see that there's no viability to this location or to the business overall, I will report that to the court very quickly. I've already shut down other locations that I see no viability with, two in San Francisco, one in Emeryville, one in San Jose. I just don't see those as benefit. They're going to be a drag on the receivership estate rather than a benefit for the creditors of the receivership estate. Whereas this location actually has great potential. It's a place that people have been going to for a long time. It's a place that has a built-in customer base that is pretty loyal. Location-wise, it's fantastic, and I think that this actually could benefit those people that were victims of the bad management that preceded me at MedMen. I mean, there's no other way to put it. MedMen was not run well. It definitely has made the press quite a bit. And I'm here to be the cleanup crew, quite frankly. And it's a job that I have done for a long time. It's not always pretty, but I have to go through it and try to make the best of it.
Thank you. Do you happen to have a sense of who may want to buy it or take it over?
Well, interesting enough, the company that had entered into the management of services agreement as the operator is interested. There are I'm getting a lot of inquiries from different groups, and I would have to vet them carefully, and I would have to then vet them with the city of West Hollywood to make sure that they qualify within the city's parameters as well, because I can't just say, oh, I have an agreement and run to court to get it approved. I need to get the landlord on board, I need to get the city on board, I need to get vendors on board, and then there are extraneous tax issues outside of the city of West Hollywood with the state of California, the federal government, and even in Canada. So I'm dealing with a lot of moving parts that I'm juggling as I walk through this. But this location, this business will have suitors. It just will depend on the city's appetite as to whether they want those suitors or not.
Okay, Commissioner Cochran.
Thank you, Chair. So you, as the receiver, are now in charge of the operations, or I guess you're overseeing them. Are the current operators not allowed to participate in the day-to-day now? Do they have to back off and let you do everything?
So the way it works is this: I actually take over the Topco business, which is the receivership entity, and then I take over all the assets that it owns, which are the downstream companies. And so the existing staff, the existing employees, et cetera, all fall under my operation. So I don't want to say that I'm like the new CEO, because but I do have operational control of what's going on. So the way that the court defines it, they call it custodia legis, which means legal custody. In essence, I hate to use the analogy, but it's like being a conservator, like in the Britney Spears situation, right? Somebody else stepped into her shoes and acted as her kind of financial controller and advisor and everything else. In essence, I'm the conservator in that regard for MedMen. So MedMen is my Britney Spears, and I have to make those decisions on its behalf.
But do they work with you? And
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So Jessica here, who's with me, is is a corporate employee with MedMen. She's not employed by me. She's employed by MedMen's corporate offices, and she handles all the regulatory liaison and correspondence. And
Okay,
everything
so
else.
the owner or operators are here.
Yeah.
You're just in, you didn't speak. Okay.
Yeah, so
Which is
MedMen,
fine.
yeah, I'm at the top of that pyramid. They answer to me, but the company still exists in that format.
Okay, great. Is the company on track to pay their new and current taxes? Like, will May's taxes be paid by the end of June?
So the answer is yes. The only issue that I have is that the CFO resigned when the receiver was appointed, and so I'm operating without a CFO right now. So I am gathering that information pretty much myself and with a bookkeeper to figure out exactly what we owe. So the revenue has been collected. We're holding it in trust, as the city attorney mentioned earlier, or the prosecutor mentioned earlier. And I just need to calculate what percentage needs to be paid to the city. I tried to get it done today. I just didn't have enough time to finish it, unfortunately. So I'm hoping by the end of this week or very early next week, those will be transmitted and paid as well. And then we should be current all the way through May.
And so, okay, so that was going to be my next part. So your all of the back taxes and penalties should be paid by the end of this month, is what you're saying?
That's correct. So by the end of June, for sure, we will be
completely caught up.
Current, exactly. And I think, so we were only open for like 5 days in March, if I recall correctly, or 7 days in March. So that'll be a short stub, but there are penalties that we'll be paying for March. April, I think we just missed the deadline for April, so there'll be some penalties for April. And then May, we're current. So we should be having to pay May by the end of June. So,
Okay.
But I plan to pay not just the taxes, but the penalties as well, just to make up for that loss.
You have to.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Barry?
Yes, I have a couple questions. So with the conservatorship, that can be transferred back to the person it's been taken charge of if they're proven. Can the same be true in a receivership?
So the answer is, in this instance, no. And I'll tell you why. So this is a legal distinction, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, no pun intended, but this is a receivership in aid of dissolution. So the parent company, the one that I'm the receiver over, eventually will be dissolved. So this company will not revert to that company. Now there is an intermediary company below that could take over those assets ultimately, but that's not the goal. The goal really is to eventually transition these assets to other folks.
And just for a point of clarity, is that other company the Captor Realtor Retail Group?
No.
Okay. So can you explain why the management agreement with the Captor Retail Group did not submit for approval with the required variance process?
I think
did that predate you?
No, I think what the reason being is that the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand. I think it was just, excuse the expression, stupidity on the part of the folks involved, that they wanted to get this approved and they got the management agreement signed, and people just moved too quickly, and the manager moved in before the proper filings could be made with the city. So there was just a jumble of things. But the company at that moment was on the verge of being put into receivership, going into bankruptcy, and so there was just a lot of papers flying up in the air and people trying to figure out what they were doing. So there were a lot of moves being made that I think just weren't being calculated properly. So I think that there was a bad mistake. I don't discount it at all, but I do think that it was just the circumstances of the moment that led to that error.
Okay. Was your client aware of the WHMC 5.70.043B7 requirements?
So I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know, unfortunately.
Okay. How do you believe these violations and the potential revocation will impact your customers and the community? And
well, I've I feel bad for the future me's that need actual medicinal cannabis if this location is their regular location that they can no longer attend to. For me, when I lived on Croft, it was walking distance from where I lived, and it was convenient and easy. And it's a great location on Santa Monica Boulevard that is easy to get to by car and everything else. So I do see that there is an impact on the community for folks like that. I also think that because it is one of the legacy locations, it has kind of an institutionalized aspect with the community and the neighborhood and everything else, and I would hate to see that just go away because of prior bad actors. My job is to be a good actor and bring it back to its in compliance and being a productive part of the community there. I also think that it would be a shame for the creditors of my receivership estate because it is one of the better locations and it is one of the locations that can actually generate revenue for their benefit. And so I see the community at large being affected by it. And there are a lot of local vendors that have provided product. A lot of people have provided services to that business from plumbing all the way to legal services, right? That are all going to be impacted if I can't somehow get its legs back underneath it and supported.
Well, so as we talk about getting the legs back underneath, what steps are you taking to kind of rebuild trust and ensure compliance with the codes and policies moving forward?
Well, one, I've created a direct line of communication with the city prosecutor. I think that is important to deal with Mr. Eckert directly. That is something that's very important to me to have someone that I can call and talk to and communicate with. The other is that I have taken Jessica and made her focus to deal with rectifying the West Hollywood situation so that her regulatory knowledge is applied directly to here as a priority and to report directly to me. I've eliminated all the bureaucracy that existed at MidMed so that Jessica answers to me directly at this point so that we can work together on these issues. I also have outside counsel that are regulatory experts. They're not here today. They had another engagement, and I thought it would be overkill to bring lawyers with me. But I do have regulatory advisors on the legal side as well, just to make sure that we're compliant. And they are experts at the City of West Hollywood's municipal code and everything else. So they are familiar with it.
Okay. And just two more. What assurances can you give the commission that similar issues will not occur in the future if we do grant this?
So for me, I'm an officer of the court. I have a fiduciary obligation to the creditors. It would not be becoming of my commission as a court receiver to not get this and do it right. So it rests on my shoulders. It's a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, I'm someone that deals with these issues quite often. It's important to me to make sure that I make good by the City of West Hollywood for personal reasons, as I mentioned earlier, having been a member of this community, but also because it's part of my job. This is my job to do it right. And the California Superior Court is trusting me to fix these situations. They wouldn't have appointed me had there not been a problem. The receivers are an extreme remedy, and so I only get appointed in the worst of situations. And they appoint somebody like me because I am very obsessive compulsive, and I want to do things the right way and very buttoned up and make sure that all the boxes are checked in that regard. So, and if there's a failure, it's also on me. So I would take full responsibility. But what I've tried to express to the city, to the prosecutor, to Jessica, is that there should be an open line of communication directly to me, because if there is a problem, I want to know right away so that I can quickly fix it.
And then my last question would be, what would you say to the other cannabis business owners, like the one who spoke here today, who came to testify, if you were in our position?
I completely understand their position. I think that this is a highly regulated industry. You need good actors in this industry. But I would also say that this is a unique circumstance. I'm not here to compete with them. I'm here to protect the creditors of this business. And it's a kind of a different obligation that I have. I'm here to protect a different group of innocent folks. You know, you're here to protect the community, and that's part of my larger mandate. But I also have a specific mandate of trying to harbor these assets and bring them back to value. And I would just ask, you know, give me enough time to be able to do my job, and then hopefully I can, you know, skedaddle out of here and move on to the next one. I don't think that it's good for anybody's optics to shut down a legacy business or a cannabis business in this time when every article that's coming out is coming out about how bad it is in California for the cannabis industry and how difficult it is. I think that collectively, if we can help bring this business and make it copacetic and make it compliant, I think it'll be a big win for the city, it'll be a big win for the receivership, and it'll be a big win for the employees that are there and everything else. And remember, these are, you know, I think I have 14 employees at this location. I'd have to check that, but they're part of the union. They're a great group of folks. A lot of them have been there for many, many years. It would break my heart to have to deal with them and tell them that, you know, this place is no longer operating because someone made a stupid mistake. It would be really difficult to do. And whenever I have to terminate folks, I do it personally because I want to express to them that what the circumstances really are and why it's happening. Because when I come in, it's not really my fault that they're being terminated, but I want to make sure that they're protected. One of the important things about being a receiver is understanding who the victims are in the situation, and employees are always at the top of that list, unfortunately. And so I have to be very cognizant of that. And so if I can protect these employees and give them a lifeline down, you know, 6 months down the line or a year down the line, it would be a nice victory. And if I can actually increase the number of employees, that would be even better, because I think that right now it's operating at a skeletal staff, and if I can get that machine working again, then I can hire more people and bring in more folks and work with the union and everything else. So I think there's a lot of upside to keeping it open right now. And if it doesn't work out, the city will be the first to know, because I'll be the first one to contact to say, look, this is just not working for the receivership estate. And I'll talk to Mr. Eckert, I'll talk to Jessica, and I'll take whatever precautions or considerations I need to take with the city and with the union and everything else to make sure that everyone is protected, but that it's shut down in an orderly fashion.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Hello. I'm also happy to hear that you're in good health now, and
thank
that
you.
the cannabis is helping you.
So,
can you remind me exactly what day you took over on the receivership?
I believe it was, the original hearing was on April 23rd, but the order was actually entered on May 1st, if I recall correctly. It took the court about 6 days to sign it. Those of you that are familiar with court, nothing happens overnight. And so the court granted it on the 23rd, but the order didn't issue until the 1st. And then I have to get a bond with a bonding company, because a receiver has to post a bond before they can take action. So that took another 24 hours. So it was the first week of May 1st or May 2nd, that I was officially in as the court-appointed receiver. And then there was a confirmation hearing, because it was granted on what's called an ex parte basis, an emergency basis. And so the court has to give due process to all the people that are involved, and so sets another hearing out another 21 days in advance. And so on May 21st-ish, there was a confirmation hearing that confirmed my appointment as the receiver.
And is that just for this location, or is that for all the MedMen locations?
That is for all of MedMen at this point.
So even though it's a Canadian operation, and you happen to be based here, a former West Hollywood resident, you handle the nationwide MedMen operations?
That's correct, because the parent company that controls all the American assets is a California corporation.
I see. And is it called MedMen?
It's called MMCAN, C-A-N, USA. So the MM stands for
MedMen Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many people from the original operation, from the MedMen operation, are still part of the company?
So at the corporate level, I have 5 employees that are from the original operation. And at the retail level, I think we have 110 employees that are...
That's across the country?
That's across the country, yes.
How about just in our location here?
In your location, I believe it's 14.
Just the employees?
Just the employees.
None
That's off the top of my head, though. I would have to double check that, but I believe it's 14.
But none of the original principals of MedMen?
No, the founders, are no longer with the company. That's been many years.
With many years, okay.
And it was a public company. It was traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. Yep.
I'm aware of that. My question is, you really didn't come on board till late May. When were you aware about all of the violations?
So I think it was, like I said earlier, I think it was about a week before I sent the termination letter. Aware is kind of a moving target. I had a lot of violations that I was putting out fires for, but when I became absolutely aware that I needed to take action, it was that Friday, May 17th, I believe, when I sent the termination notice out.
So about 3 weeks ago.
So about 3 weeks ago, exactly.
And is that when you got involved to worry about paying the taxes? And
absolutely, yes.
No one had responded to the previous letters from Jessica?
No, I think that Jessica was in regular communication with folks, but there were so many violations at so many different areas that no one was taking full responsibility for handling each one piece by piece. So I just think that there, like I said, there was a lot of activity right before the receivership happened, and I think that people's focus were elsewhere, unfortunately.
Okay.
And remember, the store was closed from all of February and most of March until March 22nd. So.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the young woman with you.
Jessica.
Jessica, also Jessica, Jessica. Are you in charge of, is she in charge of the West Hollywood location?
No, she's not. She's works for the corporate offices, and she's in charge of liaison, as a liaison with all the different regulatory agencies.
Okay. Can you state if your goal, okay, if your goal is to unload the company, make it solvent and unload it?
Probably.
But not for sure?
But not for sure. At this point, it's too early to tell, but I mean, based on prior receiverships that I've been involved in, it's likely.
And based on our rules, you can only give away up to 75%.
That's
so
correct.
25% could still stay in the hands of MedMen. Is that correct?
That's right. And probably in that instance, and I may have mentioned it earlier, I'm not sure, what we do is we usually take the equity and put it into a trust, and that trust is for the benefit of the creditors of MedMen. So in essence, the stock stays the same, and then it gets put into a special trust that becomes a creditor's trust.
Okay, and who would manage, I mean, I understand you have the responsibilities for the locations around the country, but who would be responsible for staying on top of things for the West Hollywood location, the taxes? And
There's two folks. One
who would be the management company?
Right, so it would be Jessica would be managing the communications with the city along with myself. And then we'd have an on-store manager, or we do have an on-site manager who manages the store, whose name I do not know off the top of my head.
But that would be through MedMen, so it would follow in with
Yes.
our management responsibilities, obligations?
And there would be a public hearing before the Business License Commission for a variance for any future sale before
That's
that would
right.
be completed. So none of this would just happen automatically. There would be.
Oh, I realize that.
Yeah,
I
there would be
realize
more
that.
process to have concrete answers to those type of questions when a proposed transfer is
Okay,
pending.
I'm just wondering about keeping MedMen part of the operation.
And you're right that under our code until the end of 2027, I believe it's only 70% can be transferred, and then 30% would have to remain.
So in the interim, MedMen can continue to manage the business as he's trying to find another partner, other principals. Okay, I'm trying to think. No, I think that Commissioner Ang, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ormond, how many entities are you in charge of as a receiver for?
So it's a loaded question. I'll tell you why. There are 75 MedMen entities. However, there are 22 active retail locations, including one grow facility in Utica, New York.
And are you in charge of any other entities aside from MedMen?
I am the receiver over LA Farmers, which is a cannabis former collective in downtown LA, but that is now actually being transitioned through the city of Los Angeles to a new operator, and that actually is under a management agreement that was approved by the city. So,
Thank you. And thank you for being an officer of the court. How was an officer of the court paid, just in general, so I'm not a lawyer, per each receivership that they are under receivership for?
So it depends. You can be paid on an hourly basis, kind of like a lawyer charges by the hour. You can be paid a monthly fee, or in this instance, I actually have an hourly fee that's capped at a monthly rate. So if I work more than a certain number of hours, then I cannot make more money. So,
like, not times per entity, right? Or,
right. So it's capped for MedMen, not per entity.
Got it. So I know I asked this question to staff before. I don't know if you're willing to disclose. How much are we talking in dollar values was MedMen behind in paying the city the back taxes?
So I'm told that I should probably keep that information confidential, but I can let you know on the side of the room if you'd like to know. It was in the tens of thousands of dollars that was owed for December and January, and that number has been paid. I don't know the calculation for April. That's what I'm working on right now.
Thank you for your candidness.
Commissioner Yusupov.
You said that you reacted to notices from the city with delay because you were dealing with other violations or number of violations. What were those other violations?
So some of them are simple, like unpaid rent. Some of them are in unpaid taxes in the city of San Diego, unpaid taxes in the city of Emeryville, and unpaid taxes in San Jose. So I have, that's just California. And then it was getting caught up in Nevada. Nevada wasn't in violation, but it was behind. So there were a lot of tax issues, and there continue to be a lot of tax issues. I have prioritized this one, however, because of the intrinsic value that I see to the community and the creditors and everything else.
So those violations, with all of the MedMen locations or other, all related to MedMen, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And in this particular location, were the violations brought forward by the city are the only violations, or were there other minor violations that are not listed here?
I'm sorry, I lost.
Were there any other violations connected to this location that are not listed?
Oh, not that I'm aware of at this time.
So, do I understand correctly that aside from taxes, which you are planning to pay, the violation that we have here is the operating without proper transfer of the business. So basically, your one plant is your company, right?
No, and one plant is not my company. I'm
That's the terminated management company.
So let me walk you through the history. So MedMen contracted with one plant to act as an on-site manager and operator. When I became receiver, I got notice of the violation that agreement needed to have a variance, and so I terminated that agreement. One plant is no longer operating that location. The employees have been shifted back to MedMen, and they are now under the MedMen control.
Do you know who is behind one plant and what's the reason they did that?
Oh yeah, I know who one plant is. There's nothing nefarious there. They're an operator that operates various cannabis locations, and they are contracted with MedMen to operate other locations outside of West Hollywood, and those agreements are underway. They are not terminated.
Do you know why MedMen brought them in?
I'm sorry?
Do you know why MedMen brought them in that period?
Because they needed outside help to help manage these locations, as I understand it.
As they were going for the bankruptcy?
Because they just didn't have the resources to be able to maintain the stores.
So as of that period from the beginning of this year or after they shut down and then reopened until nowadays, all of the sales and proceeds are going still for the same route as they used to, Or is there another entity that's receiving that sales money?
No, the monies are now being deposited with MedMen. You
As
mean
they-
the revenue from the store?
Yes.
Yeah, the revenue from the store goes into an account that I have for, and I think it's under the name of Pharmacy Collective, actually, so.
It's a
And-
trust account for the receivership?
And for the benefit of the receivership, yep.
And that's the way it was before, as they were.
Slightly different, because I've opened new bank accounts for the receivership estate, and to just have a fresh start with the banking, and so they're now coming into my bank accounts that I control.
Okay. All right, then I have a
Did,
question to the staff then after that.
Shouldn't one plant have known that they needed to come before the commission to take over a management company? To take over management of the operation?
I hate to speculate. I think that things were
And
just done.
MedMen should have known.
MedMen should have known. But I think that things were done just so quickly that, like I said, the left hand and the right hand weren't communicating, and I think people jumped the gun, quite frankly. I don't think it was a lack of knowledge. I think it was a jumping of the gun.
Can we ask Jessica if she has any insight into what
Sure.
happened there?
Jessica? Oh, come on up.
And you're under oath.
I think it's exactly what Richard said. I think it was so many moving parts. Our whole company was blowing up. Everyone was kind of dispersed everywhere, and no one was really communicating, I think, effectively.
How long were you with the company? Or have you been with the company?
5.5 years.
5.5 years. And what was your role there?
Compliance.
Pardon?
Compliance manager. Corporate.
Did you bring to Mr. Ormond's attention what was going on with the city and the violation notices?
No, to be honest, I didn't even know. Again, like our store was closed. I think violation notices were sent to the store. I'm not sure. We also had no corporate address. There's a lot of moving parts that I think just didn't align.
Okay. All right.
Do you guys have a corporate address now?
Yeah.
Yes. We have
The receivership.
Yeah, my receivership address. Yep.
But you'll establish, or they will have one established when you're gone, right?
They better. Yeah.
I have two more, if you don't mind. They can be
Okay, go
quick.
ahead.
So I just want to double confirm, I guess, some things that you mentioned. The management, the people who were involved in management who didn't go through the proper channels to get the operation agreement are no longer with the company?
So Jessica had just come back from maternity leave, so she gets a pass.
Congratulations.
And the management has completely changed. The board of directors resigned, and so there's no longer the board which was overseeing the company. The C-suite has resigned en masse, and so there is no one left that was in the management position at this time.
Okay.
The whole C-suite has
Yeah,
resigned.
Has resigned, yes. I have now, for full disclosure, contracted with the former CFO on an hourly basis just to get information that they can easily kind of pull up with on their different Excel spreadsheets and things, but he's no longer acting as CFO.
You mentioned that one plant was interested in possibly taking over if you were to divest some of the company. My concern is that they weren't aware of the management agreement. Where's one plant based? How big of a company is
I
it?
believe that they're based either Long Beach or Orange County, but I'm not 100%
The
certain.
California company?
Yeah,
And
California.
they operate all the other MedMen locations?
No, they operate one out-of-state location for us, which is in Nevada, but they're operating in 3 other locations right now.
Are they exclusively with MedMen, or do they have other cannabis
No, I
operations?
believe they have other companies that they work with as well.
Okay, but none in West Hollywood?
None in West Hollywood, I'm pretty sure.
So that might be why they weren't aware of the regulation?
That may be, and I think that, like I said, I think that everyone jumped the gun a bit at the moment, and I think that in hindsight, things should have been done a little bit more methodically and with a little more thought, quite frankly. And if one plant is the successful suitor from my perspective, obviously we would have to revisit this with the city and make sure that the city is comfortable with them being that suitor.
And that would come back before us anyway?
Of course, of course.
Okay.
And sorry, my second question was, now I just feel compelled to ask. You said you guys will be all paid up by the end of June. Is that true for all of these locations that are behind
Oh, no,
taxes?
that is not true.
Oh.
The company has about $50 million of unpaid taxes right now. So, and so I have to call audibles. I have to kind of pick and choose by, by my business judgment, which locations are salvageable and meaningful. This one is meaningful. This one is worth putting the effort into to try to get it back on its feet. There are some that I will have to abandon. I'm already going through that process. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be filing with the court some sort of omnibus request to shut down a number of locations, turn back a number of leases, and kind of wrap up those entities and those locations that I think are just not viable. And then others I have in different processes of being sold to new operators. And so I'm working with the state of New York. I've mentioned Chicago. I'm working with Illinois right now on that. So there's a lot.
But this one was worth was priority to you because of its value.
Right.
So it makes
That's
okay.
right. And I personally have such a history with this location. I gave it a second look, and a third look to make sure that I was making the right decision, that I wasn't somehow biased in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? Commissioner Bullen?
Just one last question for the staff, just to clarify. I know Mr. Ormond has been saying that they owe money for May, but it's also March and April as well. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That is correct, yes. I
Yes.
think it's March and April are delinquent, and then May would be due by the end of this month.
And when do you think you would be able to pay the delinquent?
So I'm
taxes?
hoping by the end of this week, but probably by early next week at the latest.
And you got the money in today for the first ones because of this hearing?
Yes, and I have the May funds already being held in trust, as mentioned by the prosecutor.
Okay. Commissioner Yusupov?
Yeah, I have questions for the staff. So if the license is revoked, then can the business walk
We can do
away?
this under deliberation. Let's
Question
just
to the-
deal with
Okay,
questions for
no more questions for applicant.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, then I am going to, I believe it's time.
Madam Chair, I know that the city attorney wants to indicate something, but I also wanted to clarify a couple of points based off of what
Okay.
Mr. Ormond testified.
We just wanted Jessica to say her full name and title for the record.
Okay.
My name is Jessica Carr. My title is a Senior Compliance Manager for MedMen.
Senior what?
Compliance Manager.
Compliance manager. Okay, thank you.
So
It's too short.
Okay, I am going
And
to.
then, just to clarify a couple of points, and again, it's not that staff is indicating that, again, that Mr. Ormond is a bad apple, but I did want to clarify a couple of things with respect to kind of dates and things. So as set forth in the staff report on page 3, there was actually a meeting between city staff and MedMen representatives, which did include Mr. Ormond, on April 18th, which was prior to his actual appointment as the receiver. But the reason why was because he's an agent for MMCAN USA, which was one of the entities under this kind of umbrella that ultimately is part of MadMen. And so at that meeting, one of the discussions was the very thing of the management agreement and the process that would be required to go through in order to get a management agreement approved in the city of West Hollywood. Additionally, as evidenced in attachments C and D, those were notices of violations that were issued out to the MadMen entities, and Mr. Ormond was copied on that as agent for, again, MMCAN USA, as well as, I'm sorry, let me just verify the specific entity.
that's right.
It was MMCAN USA, as well as Stone Blossom Capital LLC, again, another entity under this kind of umbrella. As evidenced in attachment C, that notice of violation was issued out on April 23rd. And then the next notice of violation that was issued out, which is attachment D to the staff report, was issued out on May 1st. So just to clarify, each of those things were discussed the aspect of the management agreement. And again, that was not terminated until May 17th. And then just the last thing is turning the commission's attention to attachment E. That's the actual order, the initial order whereby Mr. Ormond was appointed to be the receiver. And that was filed with the court on April 25th. It was signed by Judge Ford on April 25th. So, I mean, I'm aware that the second order that was issued was based off a hearing on May 21st, And that one did take at least a week, I think, for the judge to, which, with all respect, is very typical in the civil world, where a proposed order is given to the judge and it takes him a week sitting on his desk to get something signed. But the initial one was actually signed by the judge on April 25th. So again, just in looking at the series of events, Mr. Ormond was advised or made aware of these issues as far back as April 18th at a meeting, and then again, based off of the notice of violations that were issued on April 23rd, and then again on May 1st, and again, the termination didn't happen until May 17th. So, I mean, I do understand what Mr. Ormond's indicated about having, kind of lots of fires that he was trying to put out with respect to overseeing the national aspect of it. But I mean, again, at the end of the day, from the city's perspective, we can only focus on the stuff that's in our jurisdiction, which is our location. And again, this is not just about what Mr. Ormond has done. It's also about, if you will, the bad apple of MedMen, who was operating this and in violation of our laws with respect to taxes going back to December of 2023, and then the management agreement going back to February of 2024. So I just wanted to reiterate that stuff for the commission.
And are the people who were the bad apples, to your knowledge, are they still with the company?
Based on what Mr. Ormond is indicating, no. But I don't have any knowledge of other than what Mr. Ormond has stated. And as he's appropriately indicated, he is an officer of the court, he's an attorney. I will take him at his word for what he's indicating with respect to that those particular individuals that were at the management level are no longer involved in the operation of this.
Did the court or the judge bring up any potential conflict of interest with the fact that you were involved with previous operators but are now also potentially going to be a receiver? Became a receiver?
No, it was actually disclosed to the court. The court asked me about it, and it was not considered a conflict of interest.
They weren't worried?
Not at all.
Okay.
Remember, it's a receivership in aid of dissolution of the parent company, and so there really is no adverse parties to this. It's really just a function of how to, in essence, liquidate assets or dissolve the parent company and everything else. So the conflict of interest issues are slightly different from a typical litigation situation. If this had been a party suing to put the company into receivership, it would be a much different analysis, probably.
Got it. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, can I ask a question of Mr. Ormond?
Yes. Wait, who?
Mr. I was asking, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
May I ask a question,
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Ormond? Yeah. You were indicating that if the receivership, or as the receiver, you were to walk through the process for transferring the legacy business license to some other entity, and you were to go through the variance process that's required in order to give up to the 70% away, the other 25% would remain in a trust? Is that?
That's speculation at this point. In past situations where there has been those types of restrictions, that has been a creative way for us to be able to keep the 25% in equity in place, and then have it benefit those people that were wronged by the prior actors.
Who would continue to manage the trust?
So, great question. It could be an independent trustee that's appointed by the court. It could be somebody that is engaged to do so. It could be me. It could be me as a post-receiver obligation, doing it through, being hired by the trust as a trustee.
So either the trust could hire that person, or the court could appoint someone to oversee that trust?
That's correct. That's correct. And it'll probably happen all simultaneously in one fell swoop.
Is that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Should we close the hearing? Okay. I'm going to close it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ormond.
I appreciate the commission's time. I know that this is not an easy situation, and I am grateful for everyone's effort here.
Thank you. Okay.
Verify, you're closing the public comment portion of the hearing, but the hearing will remain open.
Yes.
And no one should leave the room in case there are
Right.
further
Thank you.
questions of the...
Forgot to say, yes, please stay here to the end of the hearing. Okay, so we'll close the public comment and bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and deliberation, and I will remind members of the public not to leave. And that's that. And Commissioner Yusupov, you had some questions?
Yeah, I had some questions for staff. So if in case this license is revoked, does the MedMen have a way of not paying those delinquent taxes? Can they just skip them and leave the city?
The taxes are due and payable to the city, so they won't get wiped away just because we revoke a business license.
And what would be the leverage that the city would have if that entity doesn't have any business in the city?
Well, again, as Mr. Ormond indicated, the city of West Hollywood's already a creditor of MedMen, so I mean, we have a procedure through the court system to be able to recover the taxes.
And it would be from the national operation if this location was closed down.
It would be from the, well, I mean, it would be through the bankruptcy and or through the receivership process, so it would be against the entity that ultimately controls that.
Now, is my understanding correct that aside from not paying taxes on time, the biggest violation was operating with a new entity that was brought into the business without proper variance, and they were operating in such way for about 3 weeks?
They were operating for that. You are correct, except for the fact they were operating for that way for about 3 months, from approximately February 22 through May 17.
With repeated warnings. With repeated warnings.
Correct.
And so during those 3 months of operating in that way, the receivership didn't happen yet. So Mr. Ormond couldn't really get that corrected until he was appointed by the court later in the process, correct?
Yes, and again, no one's alleging that Mr. Ormond was the bad apple. It's the entity that was in control, the licensee, if you will, that was in control of what was going on. But yes, Mr. Ormond couldn't do anything until April 25th when he was appointed as the receiver and then ultimately posted his bond shortly thereafter.
And Commissioner Yusupov, just to add as well, because I was a part of the discussions that were being had, there were other individuals that were representatives and employees of MedMen that participated in those discussions. And then just one slight correction. I know the February date was used as kind of when they were initially entered into as far as management agreement, but in terms of our notification to MedMen, that didn't occur until April. So April 18th, which was followed on April 23rd with a notice of violation, which was in writing, right, in terms of what the violation was. So I just want to be clear that it wasn't until that point in time of when they were communicated that they were in fact violating and they needed to take corrective action.
So it was April 18th that they were first notified?
April 18th, it's reflected in the staff report, and then April 23rd, you had a notice of violation that was in written form that was mailed as well as emailed to the folks that participated in the meeting that we had.
Okay. How did it come to the staff's attention that this was going on?
So we were made aware of that both by the entity, and then in addition to that, we did receive a complaint. That complaint again, and all of this is documented in the staff report. And so we did already were made aware of that, and we're consulting with our legal team in terms of next steps and assessing that. But ultimately, those are the two avenues that we had received, both learning of it from the entity itself, as well as receiving a report from a member of the community.
So the entity itself notified the city that they are entered into agreement with another company?
So they did make mention that as a part of one of the discussions that they were entering in or looking into entering into an agreement, but they felt that even if they were doing so, that they would be complying with the cannabis ordinance and that they had reviewed the cannabis ordinance and that they felt that they met the requirements in terms of the operations. So that was discussed.
That's when they notified the city. They felt that they were in compliance by notifying the city.
I don't want to speculate in terms of whether they felt they were in compliance by notifying us. There's a clear process that's reflected in the West Hollywood Municipal Code as it relates to what an individual business needs to do in order to potentially be considered by this body if there is an approval to operate under a management agreement.
Just out of curiosity, if they weren't a legacy business, would that management agreement have been against the rules for non-legacy cannabis stores?
You know, that I don't know. We would have to review or.
I don't know, but there's very specific language in the legacy about management agreements.
I understand. I just am curious if, because the legacy stores are under much stricter regulation, right?
Right, to continue those legacy operations, and so that's part of the reason for that restriction.
Let me ask you something. If we were to put this on hold for a couple of months and give them a chance to put things in order, would it be possible to revoke it as a legacy license and just make it a regular license if he was to try and sell it to some other company? Because if it's no longer MedMen, it's not really a legacy company anymore.
Right, it is not possible to convert this to a different type of license. The only rights they have to operate are under the legacy medical provisions of the municipal code.
Okay.
So MedMen was operating there roughly from 2020, so about 4 years from that location.
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Originally, that business opened there how long ago?
I don't have the exact date, but I would have said since 2001.
And since they got the legacy license issued to them, were there any other violations throughout their history of operating in the city? Any violations of business practices?
No, there were none. In the past, prior to that, there were no violations prior to the 12-month period.
Commissioner Golden?
So, to be honest, I was pretty bummed when I saw the agenda and found out that one of our legacy businesses were in some type of violation. I have a lot of respect for legacy businesses. I own a business in West Hollywood. I hope that my business is seen as a legacy business one day. And I know that it was mentioned that revoking a license and closing a business has bad optics for, it doesn't look good, right? Well, I know as a commission, we have been very pro-business and have done what we could to help businesses, but we've also been very pro-compliance. So we have to consider that as well. Just a comment to any of the employees that are at MedMen and any of the people who have visited there over the years too. I hope that you don't think that West Hollywood or this commission has anything out for MedMen. It's completely the opposite. MedMen has been extremely respected over the years. So respected that when MedMen did not get enough points to have a cannabis license to continue operating in the city, they created a new category of legacy businesses and gave them that opportunity to do that. MedMen has been a treasured business that's been part of the city. Unfortunately, things have happened and have changed where violations have occurred, and it makes sense, right, to be in the code that you can't have management change if it's a legacy business. You want that consistency to be there over the years. And if that's something that's changing, it's not truly a legacy business anymore. So it's something that we have to respect with that. And I don't know, I guess it bothers me that, taxes, of course, were not paid. And to say that you're still calculating things from March, I mean, we're not writing hand receipts nowadays for anything. Everything's in the computer. It's just calculating it should take a day or two to know exactly what were those receipts. What is that number that's owed? With the technology we have, it shouldn't be that difficult. So that part baffles me. Honestly, if it was a matter of just those taxes and you had paid the 2 months of January and December today, I would have mixed feelings about revoking the license. But the bigger issue to me is the management contract that has been changed. And I mean, the rules were pretty simple as far as what they had to follow. And unfortunately, the licensee wasn't able to follow them. And because West Hollywood is so committed to regulation and enforcement and compliance, as we are as a commission, it seems like a license may be lost. And our staff has been very diligent and in doing their due diligence to make sure that MedMen had an opportunity to change things and to be warned of what was happening and what was going on. And those things seem to have been ignored. Unfortunately, I understand there was a lot of change that was happening at that time. And that's what happens when businesses go bankrupt and there's no one leader in place to make that happen. And it's really sad to me. But I mean, I would be in favor, unfortunately, of revoking the license. It seems like that's the fair thing to do for everybody.
Thank you. Commissioner Hang? Pardon? This is deliberation.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, actually.
Still deliberation.
Thank you, Chair Eisenberg. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I guess my thought process is, you know, we have rules and regulations, and they should be followed. MedMen, a WeHo medical cannabis business, they entered into a new management agreement without a required variance. That is in direct violation of West Hollywood Municipal Code. In addition to that, they failed to pay taxes, which is also in violation of West Hollywood Municipal Code. I am looking at it from the perspective of if we do not revoke this license, and it sets a bad precedent for all the other cannabis dispensaries here to not pay taxes. We have rules for a reason. And in addition to that, these taxes, as the city attorney had confirmed, goes into our general fund. It pays for our sheriffs, our paramedics, our firefighters. It pays for our city staff. It pays for our potholes to be filled. It pays for our streets to be trimmed. And it pays, you know, the salaries of our wonderful city staff who are lifeguards at the pool, they work at City Hall, and et cetera. So a failure to pay taxes is a big disappointment as far as I'm concerned. And yes, I know it's an important business and it's in a neighborhood where people have gone there for years, but luckily there's so many dispensaries in West Hollywood. There's one across the street from there called The Woods in Holy Water. So people who live in that area who still might need to go to a dispensary will still have plenty of other options in the city. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Yusbarov?
So the way I see it is basically the MedMen that's going for the bankruptcy, and there's probably a lot of chaos in the headquarters or throughout the company. They just brought in the company one plant that's already working with them at the other locations, and they've been maybe not careful enough to follow the procedure. It seems like from the timeline they were notified that that's violation in April, and that's went on for at least a month. Now, that's the only violation so far we're hearing of, but it is a clear violation of the city code. So because the MedMen is not going to be continuing this, operating that location, I feel like maybe another option that we could look into would be going for another hearing of actually maybe assigning that license to the new entity, basically going through the process of making that variance approved, but to a proper company. Because just revoking the license, I don't know if it helps the city necessarily. We're going to have just another storefront with the closed doors for a while, and if the bad apples are gone, we may just give a chance to the new apple. So that's my view on it, but I'm ready to hear out other commissioners on the topic.
Thank you. Commissioner Eng?
Thank you, Chair. There are a lot of really upsetting elements of this hearing. I think first and foremost, when I read the staff report, I am fairly certain that another cannabis business is probably who reported you. And then I heard another operator come in and also support the staff's recommendation. So I really want to start with, I really hope that the cannabis operators in our city can do a better job of working together. There seems to be a lot of animosity that I don't think is helping anything. I think that if they could get it together, that we really could establish ourselves as a tourism city, as I think that we wanted to do in the first place. The other really distressing thing is that I know MedMen was one of the only, or the only unionized dispensary, so that hurts. I also know that this particular location paid a reasonable, which, I mean, all rents in cannabis are ridiculous, but this one was slightly more reasonable. So I know it hurts a lot for this license to be revoked. I really am inclined to support city staff's recommendation. It breaks my heart because I know, again, that this license is of value and that for the creditor's sake, that it would be very meaningful, so that really hurts. But I just don't see a reason to go against what staff recommendation is. Thank you.
Commissioner Cochran?
Thank you, Chair. If staff wouldn't mind, I just have one quick question for you guys. Maybe you can or can't answer this. I know you have obviously your responsibilities and your duties as employees and people who are upholding the laws and stuff that the city has passed. But would any of you be willing to share any personal opinions on what, would you want to see a business in your neighborhood shut down, or would you offer some forgiveness?
I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's appropriate, Commissioner Cochran.
I asked them if they want to.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, are you're asking that question to city staff?
Yeah, I'm wondering, and you don't have to if you're
that's
not allowed
not
to.
something that city staff would opine on. So we simply bring forth objective information and facts, and it's really up to you and the rest of the commission to opine on that.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking is because obviously I value your guys' opinion so much. You know a million times more than we do about all this. I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Eng said, that there's a lot of really upsetting things with this staff report, and it would be really devastating when there are already so many businesses that have gone out of business. The Boulevard feels like a ghost town now, and there would be employees laid off, and I think that's terrible. I understand that we have the regulations we have to uphold, but I would be, at least willing to consider maybe putting a hold on this, and if the business did pay their taxes and their penalties on time and remained in good standing for whatever maybe we decided would be a good amount of time, then to let them continue. And as far as precedent goes, we can easily set the precedent right here that this will never happen again, or the license will be revoked, and same goes for any other business. So those are just kind of my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Barry?
Yeah, I think the other commissioners make a lot of good points. To Commissioner Cochran's point, I would hate to see business in my neighborhood go out of business. it is my neighborhood. But to Commissioner Vulin's point, pro-business is pro-compliance. And the point after point, they are out of compliance. You know, I think we have two other cannabis businesses telling us to do the right thing here and asking us to make sure that we hold this business accountable. The facts speak for themselves, the timeline speaks for itself. And even Mr. Ormond said that it was just a mistake, that it was carelessness, for lack of a better word. It was a missed email. It was just, you know, bad timing. They knew about the variance. They didn't follow the paperwork. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a reason to, I mean, that's reason enough to revoke the license. We have a responsibility to the business community to make sure that we uphold that law.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate all of the comments from all of my commissioners, who across the board I agree with. I think it's a very tragic situation. I think it's disappointing. I don't regularly go to the cannabis stores, or I don't go at all, but MedMen was the first one that I was even aware of in the city, and of course for the past 20 plus years that it's been in operation. I thought it would set the standard for cannabis operations. I'm also, the fact that it's union, I would hope that if the license is revoked tonight, that the other cannabis operators will step in and help out the employees and make room for them in their operations. I think, you know, it is something that we need to uphold. Certainly, it's a reflection on the other cannabis operators who do follow the rules and want to see everybody follow the rules. Otherwise, they could get away with not paying taxes and not following, you know, doing the management companies. I realize the Legacy, you know, had a different situation. And I think it's sad. I do think it's sad, and I'm really torn about it. My big issue is that MedMen seemed to be very mismanaged and disorganized, and that everything fell through the cracks here. And my concern would be to continue having them as a legacy operation here. That would be my big concern, and why I would be inclined to support staff's recommendation, because I don't know that they should continue to be involved in the operation. And with them not being involved, it's no longer a legacy company. So I think it's unfortunate. And I say this with great reluctance. I truly do. And I know Mr. Ormond is an officer of the court, and his integrity and everything is not in question. But I would probably have to support the staff recommendations, unless there was a way that if the staff thought we could come back in 3 months, see if they've come into compliance.
I think there are possible options if the commission is interested in going down that route. The code says that if the findings for revocation can be made, you could also modify the permit. And so these aren't the typical type of operational violations where you would modify, you know, noise and those types of issues. But I suppose you could come up with some sort of modified condition to require a review of the permit, check if they've, you know, stayed in compliance, but that's only if the commission is interested in going down
Well,
that
if
path.
it was an extension of tonight to, like, we come back in 3 months to see if everything is in order, if all the taxes have been paid?
I mean, this
or
is
no?
an evidentiary hearing, and so we have to close it and make a decision based on the evidence tonight. We can't, you know, keep it open indefinitely.
Just a second.
I suppose you could put in a probationary condition where if there aren't other violations, if there were other violations in the next few months, it would automatically come back for another hearing. I suppose that's one option. I think suspension is available in the code, and then obviously revocation. They're all the same
Suspension,
findings.
can you explain
Suspension.
what suspension would mean,
think
would involve?
Well, maybe I'll let the city prosecutor speak.
So although suspension would typically be an option for revocation of a regular business license, I would think it would be problematic with a legacy business license because one of the requirements is they continuously be in operation. So if we suspend it, they would not be continuously in operation, and thereby by suspending it, we'd be creating a new ground for revocation. So I would think that in this particular instance, it would be
Although
potentially problematic.
It's a 60-day. I think they have to be in. I mean, you are right that suspension's a little bit inconsistent with the obligation to be in continuous operation. I think the term is defined as 60 days. That they can't be closed for longer than a period of 60 days or they automatically lose their legacy.
Well, I'm not talking about seeing them close because I'd like to see them generate revenues and their employees have a job.
Right, and that wouldn't, a suspension wouldn't allow for the employees to continue working or generate taxes for the city. It would be a period of closure.
Closure. Commissioner Euseborough, you had another question?
So their license is naturally expiring June 30th, right? So and then it would have been, if not for this variance or violation, it would have been automatically renewed. Now, because there is this variance violation, and I'm assuming since there is conservatorship in place, if they were to properly apply for that variance, that would call for a hearing to approve that variance. That variance cannot be automatically granted. It has to be in front of the commission, correct?
That is correct, and I don't believe that they are interested in having one plant operate. I think they have figured out their daily operations. At some point through the receivership process, the receiver might have a potential purchaser who could purchase up to 70%, and that would come back before the commission for a variance hearing. But I don't think they're ready today for another variance hearing.
I didn't mean one plant, but another entity maybe in the future that they want to get the variance for and thus transfer this license. Can we then, as a version of modifying, maybe not to automatically renew it for another year, but renew it for a couple of months so they can continue to operate until they find that other entity, and then it would come in front of the commission for approving that variance that they find, and then we will make a decision whether to continue this license or not. Can that be done?
Well, I think the renewal question is separate because the city has a process for renewals and those are on year terms. So I think the option before the commission tonight would be whether there's any conditions you wanted to impose in lieu of revocation. I'm just pulling up this section. Give me one moment. I think there's some options. These microphones never work. If the commission is interested in some possible options, I would suggest maybe we take a few-minute recess and staff can think about what the possible options would be based on the evidence we've heard in the hearing tonight, because conditions have to, there has to be a nexus for a condition, and so we would think about what would be possible.
Is 5 minutes enough, 10 minutes?
Thank you.
Can I just ask really quickly if the commission did decide not to revoke the license, but their license expires anyway, naturally at the end of the month? I mean, would the city be likely to, because of the violations of all of these, because of all these violations, not renew their license, and then it was almost like we did it for nothing?
No, so if the commission does not revoke the license, then we would renew the business license. And my understanding is that they have submitted information for renewal, but obviously that's on hold pending the fact that we're bringing this item before you all.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll pause for deliberation.
And I'll just remind the commission that the public hearing is still open, so please do not discuss amongst yourselves the public hearing, and the public can't speak to you either about the public hearing.
We'll turn off our microphones. Okay. Okay, we'll resume.
Okay.
Are we resuming deliberations or?
Yes, and I think a question was posed if there are other options besides revocation. And
Yes.
so I've reviewed the code, and I think there's probably, based on what we've heard tonight, 4 options. One is revocation, and you've determined that the grounds for revocation do exist based on the violations that have been demonstrated under the code. A second option is to take no action. A third option, the code allows for suspension of the business when the grounds for revocation exist and you've identified these violations. I think our recommendation would be if you were to take that action, it should be less than 60 days because of the code requirement that, that wants these legacy businesses to be in continual operation. There might be some flexibility on that under the code, but I think given the express provision of 60 days, it's sort of the intent of the ordinance is that they're up and operating. And then I think the fourth option would be that you could condition the license such that if there was any further violations found at the business within a certain amount of time, the business would immediately be brought back to a business license commission for another revocation hearing. And that revocation hearing would probably include these violations as well as any other violations is what would be considered before the commission
Sudden
at
death.
that time. Excuse me?
Sudden death.
One option, if you were to consider that type of condition, would be to tie it to the time period that's in the code that says they can only transfer a certain amount of the business through December 31st, 2027. So you could put that condition in place that says, if another violation is found through the end of 2027. So
All the way
essentially,
to 27?
that's the time period in the code after the restrictions in the code allow for 100% transfer of the license. So that's just an idea of a time period for such a condition to immediately come back to a business license commission if there are further violations. So I think those are the 4 options before the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Cochran?
Thank you, Chair. If we adopted that last example, would it have to come back for a hearing, or could we say if there's a violation, it's automatically revoked?
You have to
We would
provide
have
due
a hearing.
process, and so it would automatically come back for a hearing.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we have someone who wants to make a motion. Commissioner Boland?
Yeah, I'm actually ready to make a motion to adopt resolution BLC 24004, the staff's recommendation.
A second to the motion? Commissioner Barry seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, do we take a vote?
Commissioner Barry?
Aye.
Commissioner Cochran?
Nay.
Commissioner Ng?
Nay.
Commissioner Hang?
Nay.
Commissioner Volan?
Aye.
Vice Chair Yusupov?
No.
And Chair Eisenberg.
Nay. Do we have, does anyone else want to do a motion?
I'll make an alternative motion.
Pardon?
I'll make an alternative
Okay.
motion. So I would like to make the motion that we allow them to keep their license, but if there are any other instances of violating any codes, that it immediately be brought back for hearing. And I'll take your recommendation of up through, did you say December of 2027, when the legacy?
Yes.
When those, when the other restrictions would end?
December 31, 2027 is the date in the code when some of the restrictions on the legacy business lift.
Okay, so yes, through the time period up to that, so December 31st of 2027.
And if there's a second, I would read some language into the resolution to reflect that, but I don't know if there's a second for that.
Okay. No, he's clarifying.
I want to clarify. So is that exactly option 4, or because we don't know if the MedMen is not going to operate until 2027? That we already learned. So there will be some kind of a eventual transfer, I'm assuming pretty soon. So if we allow this to, like this option number 4 that you so-called, and let's say they miraculously decide to operate until 2027, they could do so as long as there are no violations, right?
Yes, and I think this would continue. Even if they come for a variance within that time period, this condition would stay on the license. So it would go with any assignment, any variance that's granted. I would recommend language to amend the business license. The number is 21-0007, so it would stick with.
Amended how?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, the wording, yes, please.
Okay, so if the commission is interested in that, there's a resolution in your packet, and in the title of the resolution, instead of saying revoking the cannabis license, I would say resolution of the Business License Commission of the City of West Hollywood conditioning the Cannabis Legacy Medical Business License number CLM 000001 for the business known as Pharmacy Collective, DBA MedMen, WeHo, located at 8208 Santa Monica Boulevard. And then in section 5, I'm just gonna read what section 5 should say into the record. It would say, based on the foregoing findings, the Business License Commission hereby denies the revocation of Cannabis Legacy Medical Business License number CLM-00001 for the business known as MedMen WeHo, located at 8208 Santa Monica Boulevard. However, since the findings for revocation can be made, the Commission instead determines to condition BLC 21-0007 that if there are any other violations found to exist through December 31st, 2027, the business license will be immediately brought back before the Business License Commission for a revocation hearing. This condition carries through on any business license renewal through this time period. And I think that would accomplish the
Commissioner
motion.
Cochran, is that okay, amendment to your,
Yeah, I'm great with that. Thank you.
okay,
So
Commissioner?
that's your
Eng?
motion?
Wait,
That's my motion.
Commissioner Eng? Should we vote?
Was there a second?
Well, there's a second, yes.
Or could we hear if she has an alternative or a tweak to that?
Wait, I think what we need to do is say nay and then do another motion is what I understand, right?
That's what I was just asking. I don't know.
But if this passes, then you won't have the
Yeah, that's
opportunity to
what
do
I
it.
was-
So why don't you give your comments?
Let me ask this then. I think his was option 4. If we did option, I think 2 of suspension, can we add conditions? Like, I know they can't be closed longer than a certain amount of time. I don't know if we can add conditions about them, I guess, reporting on what they've fixed. Is there, I guess in some ways that's really just a pause.
The amendment that she has is not a bad suggestion. No, how she reworded it.
But the 4th option, remind me, I'm sorry, of what the 4th option was.
The 4th option is that if there was any other violation, even one, found at the business over a certain period of time, that the business would automatically come back for another revocation hearing before the Business License Commission.
I don't love the 2027, frankly, but. All right, I'm sorry, City Attorney Langer, can you, will you say what you just said again? It needs to permeate a bit.
Which part?
We'll make that a motion.
I want
Her motion, what Lauren said would be the body of the motion, essentially, right?
Yes, the
wording of
revisions
the
to
motion.
the
So if you
resolution.
could just, of the resolution, and that would be the motion we vote on, right? Okay.
Okay,
We can have her
and-
repeat that then.
That is to, wait, it's not suspension then,
No,
right?
it's conditioning the license with a requirement that if there are any other violations for a certain period of time, that the business would automatically come back before the Business License Commission for another revocation hearing.
And,
That doesn't solve the management.
well, let's.
So just a point of order, where we had a motion, was there a second?
Yes, we have to have a
And-
motion and a second. We need to.
And
vote
now
on
we're
the
discussing
motion.
the motion. Okay.
Yes.
We have to vote on it. No, it's already been seconded by Commissioner Yusbarov.
We're discussing.
Okay, so now we'll take a vote.
Okay.
Jessica? Do you take the roll call for the vote?
Commissioner Berry?
Nay.
Commissioner Cochran?
Yay.
Commissioner Ing?
I'm going to have to say yay.
Commissioner Hang?
I'm not allowed to request a friendly amendment, am I? Or, so this
Well,
is just
we've started voting already.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to ask earlier.
Oh,
That is what she was asking earlier.
that's what Commissioner Ng was asking?
I think we need to.
Sorry, I think Commissioner Hang is making the same point I was, that I think what we'd like to do is evolve it a bit. So I think we have to nay this and then
Well, let's
have
finish
another
the vote.
motion.
Let's finish the vote, and then we'll see what happens.
So in,
Doesn't work. For the record, I think it is important that we state what's in front right now for voting, and it's also that we have it on record. What's the motion that you're putting on the floor? Is that what Attorney Sitinanger just read into record?
It's Attorney
Okay.
Yes.
Geiger's wording.
Okay.
Is the motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it was
Commissioner
second by who?
Hang? It was by Yusupov.
Mark
Commissioner
Yusupov. Okay. Thank
So
you.
it's your vote. You need to turn in your vote.
Would you like to withdraw the motion and start again?
If we could.
Can I withdraw the motion?
Yes, you can withdraw your motion and
listen
then
to her
let's just
friendly
start
amendment?
again. Yes.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to withdraw that motion and listen to your
You
friendly
could just
amendment.
you could just
We can
withdraw the motion and let's
kidding.
start again. So the let's hear from the two commissioners who were interested in something different.
Okay. Is there a possibility of not extending to 27?
You could set any date you want for the period by which if they have another violation.
If you want to hear.
Yeah.
I only said that date because that was what
Okay,
Attorney
no, I got
Langer
it.
suggested.
Can I ask the question? Clarify the 27 date, because that's the legacy licenses. They were approved up to year 27.
Yeah.
So that's the default year. It's not specific to this particular license.
That was just a recommendation. You could say 1 month, you could say 6 months, you could say 3 years. It was just a suggestion for a time period for this condition to be in place.
Is it possible to say, let's say, 1 year or 18 months, or the sooner of if he finds another company to come back before us because they want to sell part of the company? You know, find some other,
Well,
you know, they have the 25% that they can hang on to,
yeah.
but he's looking to find someone else to step in for the other 35, 70%. Can we make it contingent until that date?
Well, I think if the commission is interested in this sort of probationary period, they had some
Yes,
problems,
essentially.
and if there's another problem, they need to come back before the commission. That shouldn't be tied to whether they transfer it or not, because you
Okay.
want a new operator to be subject to this too. It's
Right.
saying there were problems at the business, and we're not going to take the step of revoking, but if there's another one, you're going to be back here for this very same hearing.
So 2027 isn't so bad because they have
It's-
a lot of
exactly.
time to
Exactly. It's not
make
bad.
mistakes. Okay, Commissioner.
Let
Young.
me say-
And also, just to be clear, this is not talking about extending the license all the way through 2027. They would still have to come back well, they wouldn't have to come back to the commission, but they would still go through the annual renewal process. It's just the conditions that would be imposed on the
This-
current license and then carried through to every renewal all the way up through December
Yeah.
31st, 2027.
I
It
would
felt-
support that.
And then one more clarification, so we're clear. After 27, it's just the condition's going to go away. The rest of it will stay, and then, yeah, so.
That's correct. It's just this condition, this extra layer of review and oversight. That's what it is. It's an extra layer of review and oversight.
So
for
in
a
other
period of
words,
time.
if we shorten it, it's going to be less strict for them. If we keep it to the maximum, which is 27.
That's not the
Right.
maximum. We can make any maximum we
Commissioner
want.
Woolen, Commissioner Woolen?
So, okay, I'm a little bit confused in I guess the motion that was made and the alternative to do this seems a little bit problematic. So does that mean that if there's an incident with the business, like if they have a complaint, that they come back to us? Or what are the actual violations? Is it a revocable violation? If we're saying that, oh, if they do something that is a revocable violation, then why don't we just say we approve them? What's the point of it? And then if they have that, they come back to us anyway. So if that's the case, make it clean that way. But if it's for a complaint or something else, then that's what we need to be aware of what that
I
means.
think it's an
because
actual violation.
but what's a violation? A revocable violation, or they didn't have a security guard that was there for an hour? I mean, what?
It wouldn't be a complaint. It would be an actual violation of, just like you were looking at violations of city code today that were, you know, the not paying taxes and the operator's agreement. It would be an actual violation of city code that has been investigated and documented by the code enforcement team.
So those were all conditions that would revoke the license, right? But also violations could be a security guard not being there for an hour. That's part of what the regulations are. So is that also
That's
part
correct.
of this? Okay.
It's not the same. It's not necessarily these two violations. It's this
Any
business needs
violation.
to be operating by the code, and if there is other violations, they will come back.
Okay, I just
before
want to
you
make sure
again.
everybody's clear on that.
Okay. So do we have a new motion? What?
do-
Do you have more questions?
Well, no, I was going to say I can explain then my motion so everyone understands after, right? Would you like
Commissioner
to hear
Hank,
that?
do you have more comments you want to contribute?
You know, I don't know if this is also possible. I think this would be something for Mr. Ormond, but if we extend this, I only want to do it if they're going to agree to maintain the unionization, and I guess really that more than anything. I don't know if there's a way to guarantee that, but otherwise it really doesn't mean as much to me.
It's not really related to the types of violations we have here today. I think there is a provision in the code for project labor agreements for cannabis businesses. I have to look in the. I have to look in the code. But it's not something that we would probably condition, because it's not really related to the, you know, the types of violations that we're seeing.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question for staff?
Commissioner Hang?
Can we add a condition just to pay your taxes in due time so you're in good standing with the city?
Well, that's a violation if they don't. That falls under this.
Yeah. Commissioner Hank, that's already in our municipal code, so that wouldn't need to be something that's reiterated in the condition of the resolution.
Oh, no, I meant they're outstanding that they still haven't paid yet, like within 10 days or something.
Oh, got you.
Yes, I think we can add that. Give me just 1 second.
Okay. Commissioner Cochran, are you going to reiterate
Yeah.
your motion?
If the attorney is ready, I can go ahead.
Restate.
I am ready.
You are ready. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I would like to make a motion for exactly as the attorney Langer worded it before, with the additional condition that they do pay their back taxes and penalties by the end of this month, so June 30th of 2024. And I will keep the date to December 31st of 2027.
Okay. Second? Speak up.
Second.
Okay, I'll just add in the language I read into the record before. We would add another sentence to section 5 that says, additionally, all past due tax obligations shall be paid by June 30th, 2024.
Yeah, past due tax obligations and penalties.
And penalties. Okay.
Okay. Can we take a vote? Jessica?
So
Are we
I
ready for a
suggested
vote?
10 days. Are we going to do 30 or?
Well, the 30th minus today's the 11th, so I guess 19. He said they'll most likely have them paid by the beginning of next week, if not the end of this week.
So that's within 10 days.
I did speak with Mr. Ormond, who indicated that he believes that the delinquencies can be tendered within the 10 days. Obviously, they would still have until the end of the month with respect to the May taxes, but at least the delinquencies he believes that can be paid within the 10 days.
Great.
I mean,
Okay.
we're talking a difference of 9 days, but be sure.
Do you want to go
Can we
with
take a
June
vote now?
21st? I just want to make sure the resolution is correct before you vote. So
Sure, if that'll
June
make
21st?
the rest of the commission happy. Yeah, June 21st,
Okay.
2024.
Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? No. Okay. I can restate it. So the motion is to, I will just read all the changes back one more time. So the title of the resolution is to change revocation to say conditioning the cannabis legacy medical license. And section 5 of the resolution is amended to say the following. Based on the foregoing findings, the Business License Commission hereby denies the revocation of cannabis legacy medical business license number CLM-00001 for the business known as MedMen WeHo, located at 8208 Santa Monica Boulevard. However, since the findings for revocation can be made, the Commission instead determines to condition BLC 21-0007 that if there are any other violations found to exist through December 31st, 2027, the business license will be immediately brought back before the Business License Commission for a revocation hearing. This condition carries through on any business license renewal through this time period. Additionally, all past due tax obligations and penalties shall be paid by June 21st, 2024.
Okay, is everyone clear on that? Okay, so we take a vote now?
Commissioner Berry?
Nay.
Commissioner Cochran?
Aye.
Commissioner Ng?
Again, somewhat reluctant, but yay.
Commissioner Hang?
Aye.
Commissioner Volin?
Nay.
Vice Chair Yusupov?
Aye.
And Chair Eisenberg.
Aye.
And the item passes with the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
There also is a resolution for the Business License Commission just approved and memorializes the Commission's final decision on this matter. The decision is subject to an appeal by any person dissatisfied with the Commission's decision and may file with the city clerks a notice of appeal to the City Council. The appellant or the appellant's legal representative must sign the notice of appeal and pay the filing fee at the time of filing the appeal. Appeals must be filed with the city clerk's office within 15 days of the mailing date of the decision. The city clerk's office can also provide appeal forms and information about waivers of fees.
Point of order, I just wanted to say that the fee, those that wish to appeal the Business License Commission decision would have to pay a fee directly to the city clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ormond. Of course. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8 on the agenda, unfinished business. It says none. New business, item number 9, none. Item number 10, items from staff.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Business License Commission. Just a few updates for you from staff. Our next Business License Commission meeting is Tuesday, July 2nd. Please make a note of that on your calendar. It's fast approaching. The second item for you is we report coming out of this year's Pride event that we had a great event enjoyed by many in the community. There was great coordination with all of our public safety agencies, fire, sheriff, and also all of the internal departments that work together to deliver this year's event. Want to also appreciate and thank our code enforcement staff and the folks who worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the event, and appreciate the efforts that the staff put in to ensure that we were out there supporting this event and doing the work that code enforcement is called upon to do during these events. The third item is we have a bystander intervention training in July. That'll be the next session, so staff will be notifying and putting out notifications for people to sign up for that required training that will be in July. We're also neighborhood and business safety staff are working together with our public safety staff for this year's National Night Out event on August 6th. Looking forward to that event. It's also fast approaching, and it'll be a great event again this year, and appreciate the opportunity to be out in the community and meet all the great neighborhoods and all the wonderful celebrations that they put on. So that concludes my update from staff.
Thank you, Vito. Okay, Jessica, do you have any comments?
There are no comments at
I
this
don't
time.
have any comments, thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any comments, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Any speakers at this time?
There are no public comments at this time.
Okay, items from commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Rowland.
I'll bring it up every week and every month until we do talk about it, but Aon, how are we verifying that they're carrying on the, I don't know, the goodwill or the spirit of what their license was awarded for? How are we verifying it? What are they doing? What's the progress on that? What's our system to make sure that happens? So that's the only thing just to remind the staff on.
Commissioner Bullen, staff would like to report that we have been in contact with the business operators. We have also conducted on-site inspections, and there is additional efforts being undertaken by that business to address the concerns that were previously raised. And so we will continue to follow up until we achieve the goal of ensuring that the business is in full compliance with the wellness component that we are addressing with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Hay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to wish everybody a happy Pride Month. The festival and the Pride Weekend was amazing. WeHo definitely outshone Los Angeles. I had the opportunity of riding on Supervisor Horvath's float with Supervisor Solis and the Assessor Jeff Prang. It was a great weekend. Thank you to city staff for keeping us safe. Code enforcement, you guys were up all weekend along with our sheriffs, firefighter, paramedics, and it was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Yusbarov.
Yeah, happy Pride Month. I have a question. So we already know that there's a process for cannabis licenses when they have a transfer of ownership. They have to go in front of the commission to get approved for that. Does such process exist for any other businesses, specifically the businesses that have a liquor license? If there is a transfer of ownership from establishment that has the liquor license to another one, what process do they have to go through?
If you're asking about a change of ownership for a liquor license, well, typically the business, if there's already a land entitlement at a particular location, then the applicant is required to get approval through planning division, and then they get a business license through the code enforcement division.
And such transfers do not come in front of the commission, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Another question that I heard there was some kind of amendment about hotel rooftops. Is that something that's also, well, first of all, are there changes that being done to the operation of rooftops at the hotels? And is that planning issue?
Vice Chair Yusupov, there was a meeting last week of the Planning Commission to talk regarding rooftop amenities for hotels and other activities. There was additional information requested from the commission, and staff will be returning to the commission with additional information on that item. So there was not a final action taken on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to remind or let everyone know that this weekend is the WeHo Pride Arts Festival. There's amazing events happening all weekend. I hope that people get out and experience them. There's also the Rainbow Family Day picnic in WeHo Park this Saturday, as well as QCon at Plummer Park. All great events. I hope people will check them out. Next, the city will honor Juneteenth on Wednesday, June 19th. I know City Hall is closed. I don't know if that means that meters are not enforced that day. Usually on our holidays they're not, so hopefully that's still the case. And I want to wish everyone a happy Pride and thank city staff for doing such an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ng. Commissioner Cockrum?
Thank you, Chair. I'll make this very quick. Happy Pride Month. Thank you so much to city staff for putting up with us for the last 3 hours. I know it was a little difficult, but I'm glad we were able to get through it. And thank you all so much for an amazing Pride. Safe, fun, seemed like everything went off without a hitch. Heard great things from people who saw you guys working around the clock for those 3 days. So thank you.
Commissioner Barry? Thank you.
I'd like to echo my commissioners and say, wishing everyone happy Pride. I came across an interesting statistic by the Williams Institute this past weekend in that Gen Z, now 1 in 6 of them now identify as LGBTQ. I'd like to think it's due to all the work that the city of West Hollywood's doing in creating safe spaces. But I'd like to say thank you for the work you're doing to create a world that's a little more equal and safe for the rest of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barry. I have a question. I liked that at the beginning of the meeting tonight, they suggested, basically people took an oath that they were going to speak the truth. And I'm wondering if we can recommend to City Council that they institute that policy ahead of all meetings for public speakers. I know in the case of a lot of planning meetings and even some city council meetings, there are a lot of people who are not residents of West Hollywood that come in and they speak on issues, and they may be there at the request of other people. They don't really know why they're here. Can we ask that everybody take an oath? Or have them look at that?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated of an issue because we have the Brown Act, and the Brown Act lets anybody come and testify, and so having preconditions to attending and giving public comment at public meetings isn't allowed under the Brown Act. And so for specific evidentiary hearings like we have tonight, there's a specific reason to do it. But we can look at that a little bit. But I know that with the Brown Act that having preconditions to people being able to just come and give public comment isn't allowed. People can say what they want to say sometimes, and then it's the job of decision makers to give it value and to know how much weight to give it. So that's part of the exercise as well. But putting limits on what people can say can be difficult at a public meeting. But it's an interesting.
Telling people not to lie.
we could certainly tell them to do it. I mean, I think this type of hearing is a different. It's an evidentiary hearing. For revocation of a business license, which is a very serious process. And so I think there's a lot of different areas for public comment at meetings. And so I would hope that everybody does tell the truth and does come and speak with accurate information so that you all can make the best decisions that you can.
I'm not thinking just for this commission. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking for other commissions that usually get a greater attendance of the public. Mm-hmm. But, if a direction, I don't know whether the council or the mayor, or when they direct a meeting, or the chair of planning or whatever would direct that people speak the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, thank you. And I would also like to wish a happy Pride Month to everybody. So do we have any adjournment motions tonight? Anybody? Well, I'd like to, do you have one? I'd just like to honor the memory of Commissioner Meister's father, who died last week, and I know she adjourned in his name last night. So I would just like to acknowledge that. And with that, we'll conclude the meeting. Thank you.
We're having a conversation with each other instead of an introverted activity. This is more of like a school fair where you get to try things out and you get to learn a little bit more about the elements. So finding the fun in it helps you get more creative.